On domestic borrowing, Senator Sakaja is right. That part of the reason a law was signed to make sure that there is a reprieve for local businessmen in terms of borrowing was to ensure that the interest is not too high, government is not borrowing too much from the domestic market, and so that, because it's attractive to local banks to give money to government and not local entrepreneurs. And Senator Sakaja mentioned Ochilo Ayako and Sons, figuratively. But that includes Mwikali and Sons, Mwikali and Daughters, Mutheu and Sons, Mutheu and Sisters. They cannot borrow. Mwenyekiti wa kamati, Senator Kibiru, amezungumza hapa kwa kirefu kuhusu vile ambapo tumepata shida ya waziri ambaye anasimamia fedha kutokuja katika kamati yetu, na hatua imechukuliwa kwamba wakati tunazungumzia Division of Revenue, tutakuwa na mazungumzo ya kindani kuhusu kwa nini anapuuzilia kamati ya seneti, na si huyu waziri peke yake. Hata yule ambaye alikuwa hapo mbeleni, hakuna mmoja wao ambaye aliona umuhimu wa kuja katika kamati ya seneti. Kwa hivyo ni jambo ambalo tunafaa kulizungumzia kama senate. Si jambo la kamati la hazina peke yake. Ni jambo ambalo tunafaa kutoa azimio hapa tuseme kwamba tumechoka and enough is enough. I must point out, Speaker, that in the BPS is a very big concern. And although the chairman didn't mention, the government has guaranteed a loan of 41 billion shillings to Kenya Airways. I have a question. And the committee chair mentioned that we must continue asking the question, is Kenya a going concern? I ask the question, is Kenya Airways a going concern? Well, they have a debt guarantee of 41 billion. These are questions of policy. And the second policy under question is that the chairman mentioned, honorable senators, that we have questioned the reason why government is looking at bank balances of counties as a method of releasing funds. Because we want to tell them, and we have said so, and we said so at the committee, that the cash disbursement schedule is not what Senator Sakaja famously says, suggestions, is a resolution of the Senate. And they cannot go behind the cash disbursement schedule to investigate what Nairobi has, to investigate what Makueni has, vis-a-vis how much money they should release. And importantly, there is a reason Article 219 is there. Out of 3 trillion shillings that Senator Sakaja questions as a budget, and I heard Wambua whispering also, Senator, here, why we have such a huge budget, it is contemplated under Article 219 that if you allocate 370 billion to counties, that money is ring-fenced irrespective of the problems the national government is having. That's really the point. And in Division of Revenue, we have a famous clause that if there's a shortfall in revenue collection, the shortfall should be borne by national government. We have insisted here that the Treasury does not have discretion on cash disbursement schedule, period. It surprises us that while they do not have that discretion, they have discretion of shifting 1 billion shillings to pay pending suppliers on medical leasing equipment. Scheme, famous mess, in which we were unable to make findings here for reasons that I shall not say on record. It's sad that they can shift money so easily, that you can move money, 1 billion shillings on conditional grants, and yet, if you were to request for that additional fund to make it 371 to counties, we would have to form Team Kenya here to get that amount. Senator Kibiru is right. And this question must be asked. Catering levy is part of entertainment tax in the Constitution. Why is this money not given to counties? That is something we have asked, and that is something we'll continue addressing. It's not here. Borrowing. Although county governments have been given what would be a license to borrow, we have said in this report that they cannot borrow the way they want. That we need to see policy under Article 212 to guide borrowing national government. There's something that Senator Sakaja missed, and I think he should note, that government owes Nairobi County a lot of money in terms of property rates, which they have not paid. That question is in this report, and it has not been addressed. And we will continue asking on behalf of Nairobi residents, but on behalf of Kenya, why government is not paying property taxes for purposes of buildings in Nairobi, including where we are seated today. Public debt is a matter of concern. I know when I spoke here, when I moved the motion to reject the ceiling, all of you are looking at me with glazed eyes. I won't tell you why you are looking at me with glazed eyes. But I repeat, it is a matter of concern. It is crowding out division of revenue. I'm not concerned about the others. And we must continue asking the necessary questions about public debt. I know, Mr. Speaker, when we were discussing this issue, you made a side comment, and you referred to the questions of public debt. You approved it here, but it's a matter of concern. It concerns me, my dear colleagues, that whether it's now or later, with a GDP of 10 billion shillings, we are now talking about a debt of 7.8, and the chairman says we are going to reach the threshold of 9 billion in a year. It's a matter of concern. So the question of retiring expensive loans is a matter that we should discuss. In fact, I want a president who is going to be so radical that we must default on some of the Chinese loans. We must say no to some of these debts. We must say that these debts were obtained by Kenya through force, coercion, undue influence, and whatever it is. We must refuse. I am looking for a president who will say no to this. Who is going to be that person? Will the real man stand up and say no to these debts? They are terrible debts. At 36%, I can tell you, my dear colleagues, who will not be able to pay these debts. I have asked the fundamental question, and we must ask that question while we are discussing debt. Where is the paperwork on the standard gauge railway? Is it true that we have put the port of Mombasa as a collateral? Is it true also that that document concerning the SGR speaks about an arbitration in China, Beijing, in Chinese language? Can we ask these questions, my dear colleagues? Because this is our country. Who becomes president is not going to change that fact. So therefore, as we discuss policy of government with regard to debt, with regard to our policy on financial statements, let's ask the correct questions. And by asking the correct questions, and I support Senator Sakaja, we are asking the correct questions not only to help government, but to correct the mistakes that have been made by this government. While Sakaja mentions debt, while Sakaja says we have overborrowed, which government has overborrowed? Which government allowed this sort of borrowing? Who was clapping when they were borrowing? Who is disowning this borrowing while they are still in the same government? Dear senators, do I need an answer to that question? Who is turning their back on borrowing? Yet they were part of this government when they were borrowing. But this is a very serious issue. And as a Senate, we must interrogate. And that's the reason, as a committee, we have said that when you table a budget policy statement and you're talking about debt, you're talking about either retiring debt or acquiring less expensive debt, you must submit a debt register as part and parcel of the policy. Otherwise, it is assumed that you are hiding things. And you're only hiding So that you, at one time you create a crisis and you bring it here and you say, without increasing the ceiling, we will not be able to do X, Y, Z. And we must speak to this in such a way that you do not get people across the aisle, standing and looking holier than thou. When you give